Welcome to TGIF.
I think we can all agree we typically like to do things that have purpose, that have meaning. I do. I like to get up and feel like I have purpose in what I'm going to do for the day, and that at the end of the day, there's meaning and value. But often I'll look back and at some of the things that I did, or some of the words I said that I probably shouldn't have said, and I realized it was all
Takes us to the word of the day, which is meaningless.
I don't want to do anything meaningless, but it happens all the time. And as we jump into Ecclesiastes, today we are in chapters 1 and 2. We have multiple verses that we're going to be reading. So if you have a pen and paper, you might want to jot those down so you can look at them throughout the week. But chapter 1, verse 2 being the first one, kind of is exactly what we just talked about. Verse 2, everything is meaningless, says the teacher, completely meaningless. And then moving on to verse 9 through verse 11, history merely repeats itself. It has all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. Sometimes people say, here's something new, but actually it is old. Nothing is ever truly new. We don't remember what happened in the past, and in future generations, no one will remember what we are doing now. And then let's jump forward to chapter 2, verse 11. But as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all so meaningless. Like chasing the wind, there was nothing really worthwhile anywhere. And our last scripture verses, 24 through 26. So I decided there is nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. Then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God. For who can eat or enjoy anything apart from Him? God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy to those who please Him.
Yeah, making a transition out of the book of Proverbs into Ecclesiastes, and you'll notice a little different style of writing and how the connections aren't so rhythmic as they were in Proverbs. And so it's more, putting big concepts, big ideas together, these meanings. And so Solomon makes a great effort here to find the meaning of life. And thankfully for us, if we read it and we pay attention, thankfully he shares the results with us. But here's the challenge. Will we listen to his advice? I tend to think about as I read some of this that I've had to learn some of these lessons the hard way. I know they're in the scripture, but there's something about you tell your kids, don't do that, and they've got to go do it. And so there's some connection there that I think is part of human nature, the brokenness of human nature. It's like we've just got to go see for ourselves. And that's the real sad part of all of this. And that's, I think, why Solomon is making an attempt here to remind us that, this meaninglessness of life is there because it's separated from God. And because it's separated from God, it doesn't have value, but yet we chase after it. And he says it's like, chasing things into the wind or something, trying to do these things. It's really hard.
Yeah, like chasing the wind. We think something is so important that we get it done, that we achieve it, that we accomplish it when it's really a worldly thing. Now, does God not want us to have success and accolades from time to time? This is a little bit different, but if you're doing them for the sole purpose of you and fulfilling you and what you look like to others, that's kind of the vanity of it all. And I think that's what Solomon's trying to teach us through all he shares with his experiences, and then he realized it's all from God.
Yeah, it was really that, getting back to the core of wisdom, knowledge, and joy. And those are the things you want to really focus on, because those are from God, and those are gifts from God, and those are the true heart and the meaning of life. So we live in a world, chasing after these self-indulgences, and I think that's a component of this as well. And so self-indulgent often is applauded in our culture. I mean, it even is put up on as an idol. I mean, we wouldn't call it an idol, but people would say, man, look at that person. Look at that person. Look at all they're doing and all they're accomplishing. And we applaud them and we say great things about them. And sometimes it's so separated from God. And that distance of what God really wanted for an individual's life. And so then that's the struggle, right? What are we focusing on? And I think that's what Solomon's trying to remind us, that history keeps repeating itself. It's like every generation, it's just like we don't learn. I mean, and we're even in a series right now where we see the hypertension of politics and how politics, you know what, it's happened before. It's happened before.
And it'll probably happen again.
And it'll probably happen again. And it's the same thing, but what we end up doing is we battle with each other, and we battle with, even Christians, right? We're battling with each other over these things that in the end draw us away from God rather than getting us closer to God, which that's community. And often community is messy. It is a little messy, but when it's focused on God, I don't know, it helps us to remind ourselves of what we are doing has purpose because it's God's purpose for my life. And that's what this whole design for purpose is, right?
Because when we pinpoint the what we're looking at that's frustrating us, or the struggle, or what we're going through, and if we know history repeats itself in a sense, in maybe a different way, shape, and form, because we know a lot of the things we experience now, we could have learned through the writers of the Old Testament.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we're doing some of those same things. So what keeps us from stepping back and having that bigger picture? Because that's not that we can see what God sees, but knowing that there is more to the story, because it's his story and not ours. But yet we go and get so tightly wound when something doesn't turn out exactly how we wanted it to.
Yeah, I really like that chapter 2, verse 24, where he says, so I decided there is nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. So he's pointing us to work, value in work and doing it. He doesn't want us just twiddling our thumbs, but that we find a work really that is a gift from God, and enjoy that, and enjoy also time to eat, eat together. One of the parts of this was, there's this, that season time for everything. So we really got to kind of connect these together, because then he goes on to, for who can eat or enjoy anything apart from God? I think that's the key.
I think we have some questions we're going to share with you that we encourage you to write down. But really, if you take anything away, that apart from God, like if you just looked at every area of your life and every decision you make within a day, I mean, oh gosh, I know there's just statistic on how many decisions are made in a day, but ask yourself, was that with God or apart from God? Or was it with God the way I wanted it to go with God, or apart from God? I mean, that makes a big difference. If I go to work knowing it's part of what God has for me in my life right now, and God's going to use me in my work, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think that the point for Solomon too is getting to this idea that, God really wants to have pleasure in our relationship, that pleasure. And so that's the life that we're looking for. And I think when we try to find it in the world, that's where the disconnect comes.
And that self-indulgence of the world tells us is okay. Get more, get more, get more. So the first question, and again, you may want to write these down if you want to have conversation about them, or if you're in our class that we're doing that is going to be talking through these weekly TGIFs. The first question, how do we find the fine line between our justification of true need and desire for self-indulgence? Do I need this, or do I really, really want it because I just really, really want it? I mean, that's tough, because sometimes you need a new car.
Yeah, but and two, it's not calling us to live some kind of a minimalist life, right? Having nothing.
Right, which is the next question. Does this mean a life is minimalist? So these really kind of connect to each other. God doesn't want us to go purchase a car we cannot afford. So need versus self-indulgence. Next question, what does embracing God's plan look like?
There's a good one.
And I think we kind of hit on it earlier when we said, apart from God, nothing matters. To embrace God's plan is to make sure God is the plan.
Yeah.
And
So true.
apart from God, we can do nothing. It doesn't mean everything's going to go well, but embracing God's plan for my life knows there's going to be good days and bad days and everything in between. But God's got a plan, and I'm going to embrace it. And the last question today, are there other scriptures that keep you grounded in God's meaning for your life? And I think that question came to be is a lot of things we just talked about chasing the pleasures of the world and self-indulgence and God's plan and living a life with meaning and value and all of those things. I have no doubt there's other scriptures that you find that you go to when you want or need that affirmation of all the things that God can remind you. So I think with this question, it would be a great idea to reflect on that and write some of those down. Do you have those scriptures that you go to when you're thinking, is this all meaningless? Kind of like Solomon started, everything is meaningless. When you're having a bad day where everything is meaningless, that means you're not connected to what God is doing. Because we know God's always working.
He designed us for a purpose.
And we have to make sure we are connecting with Him to find out what that purpose is. So next week, we will read and talk through chapters 3 and 4 if you want to get ahead. See you next time on TGIF. Bye.